What are you doing, Daddy?
Trying to take over the world, Tyler. Welcome to the Awesome Black Dad Show, your number one podcast for and about black dads. I'm your host, creator Terrell Lindsay, and I created this show with the hope that I can encourage, empower, educate, and in the process, entertain fathers in a way that inspires us to be a better version of ourselves. This is episode 4 of the Awesome Black Dad Show, and today we get to chop it up with Fred Anderson, another participant of the Fatherhood Through the Eyes of Black Fathers coffee table photo book project that looks to tell a more positive story about black fathers. And believe me when I tell you, we got into some deep, meaningful conversation about legacy, masculinity, and raising daughters. I think you will be, scratch that. I know you will be inspired by the topics we address, so sit back and enjoy this episode about what matters most. Welcome to the Awesome Black Dad Show. We're here with Fred Anderson. Welcome, young man.
What up, what up?
So we're going to get right into it, man. I would like to know, who is Fred Anderson?
Man, that's a deep question. Honestly, even at the ripe old age of 38, I'm still growing and still trying to find that out myself. You know, there are things that I know I like. There are things I know that I don't like. And then there are moral values that I know I have and must stick to. So I think who we are as people is forever evolving. Right now, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm transitioning into being an accountant.
Okay, well, we'll take that
Right.
transition. So, I mean, with that being said, we're all, like you said, we're all human beings, and we're all built from our experiences. So, how would you say that your childhood household experiences have influenced you or who you are today?
My childhood experiences really shaped everything I am as far as my moral character and things that I look for in people and things that I'm attracted to. As a child, I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. Don't everybody get nervous. I ain't knocking on your door.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't have let you in if you had a pamphlet.
But I feel like they instilled in myself a lot of moral standards that are very valuable in society. You know, as far as being honest, having a relationship with God, or just spirituality in general, and not necessarily religion, and being able to be who I am in the face of adversity and in the face of what other people may agree or not disagree with in regards to my own personal moral standards.
So, and not to get too deep into religion, but is there a particular thing that made you? Because I don't know if you're still practicing Jehovah's Witness, but what made you walk away from that? If you've walked away, you know what I mean?
At this point, no, I'm not practicing. I haven't gone to a Kingdom Hall since I was 18, so 20 years. But what shaped me or molded me was the fact that I was able to be who I am. What caused me to leave was the fact that it was a very interesting experience. At the time, they were very separated from the world, were different from the world, et cetera, et cetera. And so in high school, I was a fairly decent athlete, and I had an opportunity to go pursue or continue my career in college. And some people were against that, like, you're going to be too involved in the world, you're going to be away from your family and around other influences. And just my knowledge of the world at that time, I felt like my ability to take care of my family superseded any obstacles that I was going to have to overcome in order to get there. I know as a black man, you need to be able to have a solid background and a solid education to find yourself in this world and find a place where you can take care of your family. At that point, entrepreneurship and things like that were not as readily exposed, or we weren't as educated on them as we are now. Now I feel like, college education is not an absolute necessary, but at the time I did. And so based on that, I had the opportunity to go for a discounted rate. And I was absolutely taking that opportunity and telling me, Fred, maybe you should look into, different avenues, or do this or do that, and not go away to school and not be a college athlete. I felt was ludicrous. Like, I'm doing it. You know what I mean? And, even though you guys may not agree with it,
yeah, but it was, so you're saying it was the limited exposure that kind of drove you away from it, right? They put it, to some degree, it was like you were being put in a box at a very young age, and there were things that you felt like you needed to be able to experience to become a well-rounded individual. And not to say that people who've decided to go the opposite route in which you chose aren't well-rounded individuals. It's just for you felt like you needed to be exposed to a little bit more.
Yeah, I felt like some of the rules and regulations were not for that particular time frame that we lived in, or not for the generation that we were a part of, or we are a part of. Mm-hmm. So I understood, a lot of the points that they share, and then also I didn't agree with some of the separatism that they encouraged. And so with that, I walked away.
Understood. So shifting, just a little bit, going back to your childhood experiences and how it influenced you, from other conversations outside, as you grew up in a household with both your mom and dad, and so I'm wondering, how did the relationship between your mom and dad and those experiences, how important was it for you to get married before you decided to have a kid?
For me, there was no having children if I wasn't married. Not to say that it was one of those things where having a child was something that I was going to do everything that was, for my moral code in order to prevent having children. So in other words, when I did engage in sexual experiences, I definitely protected myself.
Right. Let's clarify those sexual experiences. So,
my fault. It's 2017.
Right.
My bad. I'm 100% heterosexual.
Right. Yeah.
Never dibble dabble. I ain't that guy, man. Nah. This is a family show, so I won't give y'all any
right.
details.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. We're not getting into that, but yeah. So, in those experiences, would you say that the relationship that you saw your mother and father have in that household is what drove that mind state for you, or is that something that you just kind of developed by seeing things outside of your home? And when I'm asking about the marriage, the thought about marriage.
Marriage was never really a goal for me, and I don't think marriage is a goal for, honestly, most men. We don't live our lives to say, I want to grow up and I want to have a family and get married and do this. The average man just kind of, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Mm-hmm. But my thing was, if I had children, I wanted to only have children with one woman. And, I wanted to be married to her when I did. Mm-hmm. If it didn't happen, it didn't happen. But at the same time, my goal was to, say, hey, if I'm going to have kids, I'm going to have a family. I want to have a whole family. So I want to be married and live with my wife and have children. Mm-hmm. I won't even tell people that having children was ever a goal of mine, because it really wasn't.
Not ever?
Never.
Not until she walked in the room and was like, this plus and minus on this stick.
The thing was, I knew how I felt about my wife. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I knew that was the person I wanted to be with and want to build my future with and have a family. So when you find somebody that you love like that, whatever they want, you work to provide. You know what I mean? So my wife wanted, to have kids and things like that, and I was open to it. You know what I mean? I loved her that much. It was like, having kids is not a problem for me. You know what I mean? Well, having kids with you is not a problem for me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I could do that.
Right.
So I was definitely open to it, and the love that we share, definitely was the catalyst for the fact that, yeah, okay, we'll have, a child or two or three.
Right. Well, it's the 2 or 3. Yeah.
We have one now.
Yeah, but with respect to that, did your perspective change after Chase came into the world, right? So you were saying that originally you never really thought about having kids. It was, if it happened, it happened. If it didn't, okay, so be it. And then you made the decision that once you found the woman that was for you and she wanted kids, it was acceptable. You were like, okay, we can do this because I love you just that much and I want you to be happy. So after Chase came into the world, did your perspective change about kids and what you wanted? Your wife aside.
I don't want to say my perspective ever changed. It was just like once you decide, hey, I'm gonna get married, and once you make the decision that we're gonna have children, you know what's coming along with it. My father always told me from the jump, from the opportunity, from the time he knew that I was going to become sexually active, he was like, I'm gonna tell you one thing and one thing only. You have a kid, you, her, and it are not coming here.
It?
Yeah, he was very adamant about that. Like, once you have children, you're going to become a man. And throughout my entire life, he always told me, your job is to make sure that if you have children and you have a family, that they have a better life than what you have. Problem was, I had a great life. So
you had a high bar to meet, huh?
Man, pressure was on.
Yeah.
So I do my best to meet it. And once Chase got here, from the moment my wife told me that she was pregnant, probably it was either one of those days between my birthday and her birthday, because we had a birthday party at Griffin Lounge and all my friends were there. And I remember right before it, she said, by the way, I'm pregnant, or something to that effect. And I was like,
did you ask for another drink after that?
Yeah. Nah, because we were at home getting ready for the party.
Oh, getting ready for the party.
So I was like, cool, that's great, let's do it. The majority of our wedding party was actually at the birthday party. And I remember distinctly, I was, just so happy. You know what I'm saying? My guy Phil was there. Like I said, the wedding party was there. And if you ever remember Griffin Lounge, you came in, you went to the right, and the DJ booth was kind of in the center, and the party sections were around it. I remember DJ Broadway was DJing, and we were, if you facing it, off to the left, and I was like, man, I need a drink, got a beverage, stood on the couch, and I was just like, in my glow. It was one of like the happiest moments, happiest experiences that I ever had. You know what I mean?
So Tom Cruise on Oprah Winfrey's couch.
We've never seen you behave this way before.
I know.
Have you ever felt this way before? You're gone. You are gone.
Man, it was like, like a Bad Boy music video.
Hello, welcome to the Bad Boy World Champion PGA Tour. I'm your host for the day, Mace Gumble. With this last birdie right here, Puffy Woods win the champion from the 3-time champion, Fuzzy Badfeet. Silence, audience. I think his pants are a little too tight, and he really has a wedgie.
He's unstoppable.
Time.
Yeah. So no, I mean, just hearing you talk about it sounds like, whether you believe it or not, your perspective changed from a point that it was no longer just the love of your wife for having a kid. It was a realization that I'm about to have a kid, and I'm about to be a father, right?
Yeah.
And so in those moments, and maybe even after, what would you say fatherhood meant to you? Like, what does it mean to you?
Man, it means everything. It has me look back at what my father was to me and for my family. And I know how high that bar has been set. You know what I mean? Every time I think about, being a father, I remember the moment me and my dad sitting on the edge of his bed, facing the window, and he looking at me and he's saying, you know, your job is to be a better father than I am. And I looked at him and I'm like, okay, cool. Not understanding the gravity of that statement. And as I get older, every year, the gravity of that statement gets more and more serious to me. Like by the time I was married and in a position and about to have a child, like I knew what it was and I knew what I had to do and I knew what type of person, what type of man I had to be. And, you know, from that moment on, like that's what I was on. Like that's what I'm out here for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, every decision I make now, well, let me rephrase that. 99.5% of the decisions I make now are based off of two factors, my wife and my daughter. Everything else is a byproduct to that. You know what I mean? I don't go to work just to go to work. I go to work because I got to be able to do certain things and I got to be able to be a safety net for my family, for my daughter and for my wife. And I didn't go back to school and get these extra degrees just to say I got all these letters behind my name. I did that so I could be in a better position to take care of my daughter and my wife.
Right.
You know, and so everything I do is centered around living up to that expectation of my father telling me, you got to give your child a better life than you had. And my childhood was dope. Very dope. You know, I can't put it any other way. You know what I mean? It wasn't better or worse.
Right.
It was just different.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think we as people, as human beings, don't embrace the differences in each other and in each other's backgrounds and lives. And I think that's one thing that my parents, knowing or unknown to them, instilled in me is the acceptance of differences and recognizing it and being appreciative of the opportunities you had. You know what I mean? There were some things that growing up where I grew up kind of didn't allow me to grow in certain areas, but it, you know, encouraged me to grow in others.
Yeah.
So
no, I mean, when you look back on things, the older you get, you begin to, especially when you have your own kids and your own family, there's a level of appreciation that you begin to have for your parents that you can't even begin to understand why you didn't have that appreciation then. Like, why couldn't I see how hard this was or how hard my mom worked to allow me to be able to have or see this thing, right? And I guess you just have to go through some of that to begin to appreciate those things. But no, I absolutely understand what you're saying. But in that, you were saying earlier that that everything that you do and the decisions that you make, your wife and your daughter come first. And that's admirable for sure, because I definitely understand that, I think the same way. But I have my challenges with that in terms of pressure. So I want to ask, do you feel like there's any pressure or challenges related to always and forever making decisions that impact other people, right? The people that you love the most, right?
absolutely. I saw, or I had a discussion earlier with my wife. She was watching a reality show, and they were talking about how one of the characters in it was suffering from like some sort of like depression from being a husband and being a parent. And, you know, depression is a serious thing. So I'm going to give you a disclaimer, because what I'm about to say is going to be very un-PC. I respect it. I understand it is a very serious issue. But at the same time, I feel like as a man, there are certain things you just got to man the fuck up.
Ooh.
But you got to.
No, it's real. We got
When you make a decision in your life to do A, B, and C, now it's game on. Now you got to follow through. For men, you choose to get on your knee and ask that woman to marry you. So whatever come with it, you asked for specifically.
Right.
You brought all that on yourself.
Yeah.
So when the pressure get to you, you got to look at it like, this is what I asked for specifically. And so now I got to jack my slacks and do what I got to do to handle it. That does not mean you won't get tired. That does not mean you won't get fed up sometimes. That does not mean you won't get frustrated. You're going to feel all those. It's time I look around and I just got to go sit and have a drink and be like, man, it's real out here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's only for a certain moment.
Yeah. So I agree. I agree, and I to some degree disagree with you, in the sense that I understand that we have to, as men, there's a level of responsibility that we must take, whether we're married or we're in a committed unmarried relationship, and we've decided to bring kids in the world. Those are decisions that's a part of being an adult, right? Not just a man, but a woman. But I understand what you're saying from a man's perspective because of how we're socialized and how we're supposed to think, protector, provide, and all those things. And so I get that that there's a level of responsibility that a man needs to have, right? I even today with my oldest son, and when I take him to school, he tries to leave his book bag in the car, and like, Dad, can you get my book bag? And I say, well, where's your responsibility, right? So I believe it starts there, and then they begin to believe that the things that they take on in life, they have to have a certain level of responsibility with respect to that. So, but this is where I disagree. We can't continue to dismiss how hard that is, because in the instances where depression is real, stress is real, anxiety is real, and all of those things kill, right? And so in our community, I think that it goes unsaid that men deal with a level of stress that we cannot, we just don't know how to deal with it, right? Women let their emotions out in a way that allows them, and it doesn't mean that it's any easier for them. It just means that they have a better way of handling the release of those things. Like when you said, you got to jack your slacks up and take responsibility and take it on. You go have a drink by yourself and you internalize it, right? But that does not mean that every single day when you go to work, you got to deal with a certain level of stress. When you come home, you got to deal with it. And then all the decisions that you make are for someone else. You've taken yourself out of the situation, so you're neglecting yourself in a lot of ways. And so if we're not mindful of those things, what happens is we wind up 35, 38, 40, and we're dealing with things that we have no idea. Like we begin to deal with health issues that we know we have no idea how they generate it, right? Go ahead.
But at the same time, that's why it's so important to pick the right wife and the right mate, because I do not feel that I bear all of my stresses alone.
Okay.
Some of them I may need to, I feel like personally I release them all. It's just you have to pick and choose what you release and where you release it. You can't put all your burdens on other people, and you can't put all your burdens on yourself. So that's why having a wife that I can sit down and talk to and be like, man, this is this and this is that and this is what's going on. Right. And then knowing at the same time, I can't put all that on her, because then I'm bringing her down. I can't be a weight on her. Right. So sometimes that's why you got to have discussions like we have with other black men who are in the same situation. And, you got to talk to certain things about life with your peers and things like that. And you got to have those release points to let them out. Now, I'm blessed to have, those things. A good circle of friends, a good wife I could talk to, that I can, get that stress release. Right.
And so what you've done, it sounds like what you've done is you found your appropriate level of management of those things, right? And so you can put things in their proper place, and you understand when it does become challenging, you figure out how to manage your way through it, right? At the end of the day, it might be hard at the beginning. You might be in a space where you just can't figure it out right then and there. Right. But yeah, no, absolutely. We definitely have to get to a place to where we learn how to manage those things. But we aren't, as men, we aren't taught how to manage those things, right? At least from my perspective. I don't know what happens in every household, but some of the people that I talk to, circle of friends and things like that, some of the conversations that we have, it's the, suck in the air, let your chest, make your chest big, and walk with a strength that shows that you can handle these things. But my shoulders are only so big right? And then we set this perception, even in our households, we begin to set this perception that we can handle everything, right? And so we train the people that we're around. We train them how to teach us. I mean, not how to teach us. We train them how to treat us, right? And so if you're the type of man that always takes on everything, right? Nobody notices. They forget how strong you are because you just keep taking it and you keep taking it. And then you don't release it because you think that all you got to do is and walk away, you know what I mean, and deal with it the next day. And then at 45, how did he fall dead?
Right.
Or what happened? He was working out every day and doing these things and so forth and so on.
That's why it's very key to find those release points, because some people may view like, oh, Fred, he has it all together and he has this and, he does that. But the people who really know me know not just my strengths, they know my weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
The people that I value in my life the most have all seen me cry, and I don't walk around crying. You know what I mean? It's a short.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. Do you have a handkerchief in your pocket everywhere you go? Because we were going to talk about that. You know what I mean?
But
suck it up.
You have those moments where it get to you sometime and you get weak, and you gotta let that out. But at the same time, you gotta spread that out. And I think we as men need to talk to each other more in a more vulnerable space.
Yeah.
Now everyone can't handle that because you cannot just open or expose yourself to just anyone.
Right.
But when you build those relationships and you find those people who genuinely care about you and are genuine friends, then you gotta be able to. Those are the people you can release that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, and let that out.
They're gonna give you the good back. So when you give them what you have going on, they'll assess it in a way that it's helpful, even if you don't agree with it immediately. It's very vital and important to have a circle of people that aren't necessarily yes men.
Absolutely.
Right? And they're gonna be there to tell you, like, bro, that shit you just did yesterday, everything you getting, you deserve what you getting.
Yeah.
Now you can decide how you gonna deal with it. You can lay over here in the corner and cry. You can get up and dust your boots off and figure out how to get back from it. But everything that you did was a direct result of of the mistake that you made. And everybody has those vulnerable moments. But like you said, as men, we don't necessarily do that. With all the things you talked about your father and your household and those experiences, what principles of fatherhood would you say that you swear by?
Do whatever you got to do to protect your family and your children. Period. You have to be a teacher. You have to be a role model. You have to be a counselor, and you have to be there to tell your children, hey, sometimes you got to suck it up, and then you got to be there to tell them, this is, it's okay to let it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think having a daughter has definitely helped me with that, because I know for a fact if I had a son, I'd be way tougher on him. No doubt about it.
Man.
I'm just going to be honest. I don't feel like it would be.
Do you think that that's necessary? Do you think that we generally need to be, and I'm going to add, as black men, do you think we generally need to be tougher on our boys for the greater good?
Absolutely, because the world treats us different, without a doubt. Look at the disparity of black men in prison.
Right.
You know what I mean? The world treats us different over everything. You know what I mean? If I go out here and I, steal a car let's say it's a car that's running at the gas station. If my car stops and my daughter at the hospital and I go run and take the car and it's running and I drive to the hospital, I do that. It's Grand Theft Auto. Fair skinned Billy Johnson does that. It's joyriding.
Right.
Which technically are, the same thing.
Yeah, the same thing. Yeah.
So you have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
So you just have to treat. We also have to be more cerebral about the decisions we make. We are not afforded the opportunity to react to things out of anger. You gotta remain stoic.
Yeah,
in how you respond to things.
Yeah, I was telling my wife when all the stuff was going on with with the police shootings as of late in 2017, and the kid and some of the kids that have passed away as a result of some of the police brutality. I say one of my biggest concerns is that I'm going to have to teach my boys that they can't necessarily have a bad day, right? In moments where, and that's almost anywhere, right? Whether it's at work, whether it's in the car and you get pulled over, you could be we generally as human beings have bad days where we don't want to be bothered with anything, right? Uh-huh. And so we don't have the opportunity to express that outward emotion in environments where our lives are at stake, right? So police pulls you over and you built up with this anxiety, you had a bad day at work, right? You have to internalize all of that. You just get off the phone with your wife or your girlfriend and you're ticked off, and all you want to do is just get somewhere and let the steam off. And then you get pulled over for whatever reason, and that reason may not be a good one. And so now what you have to do is all the stuff we were talking about before in terms of being able to externalize your emotions. You have to pull all of that back, right? Because you can very well not make it home. And so you have to teach them how to survive a particular encounter where a person, Billy John, as you were saying, might not necessarily have to do the same thing. So I agree that there's some that we do have to be. There's a level of toughness that we have to very carefully explain to our boys about masculinity and all these other things and how they need to act and react. I told my son, like, you have to learn how to control your emotions, your anger, your energy. You have to figure out how to control that, because if you don't, somebody else will, and it's not going to end well, right? Not all the time anyway. And so, we're talking a bit about, the future of our kids and children and things like that. So what type of legacy would you like to leave for your daughter?
That's such a broad question. Of course, when my time comes, whenever that is, I want to leave her, number one, with fiscal responsibility. I want to leave her able to manage herself, monetarily, and manage her resources appropriately. And I want to leave her with some resources, so, she's not worried about, oh man, I lost my old man. How we going to, take care of him? How we going to put in the ground? How we going to take care of that? That's not something that she's going to have to, that won't be a decision she'll have to make. Right. You know what I mean? I refuse to not, to allow her to have to think in that space when my time comes.
Yeah.
Another thing is I want to leave her with great moral character. I want her to know when she makes certain decisions, I should or shouldn't do this. This is why, and this is what my parents taught me, and this is the type of person my parents groomed me to be. Having lost a father, when I make certain decisions, I think back to that. A lot of the things that he said to me, even though he probably thought I wasn't listening, still, resonate in my mind, and I still, think back to those moments and those conversations that we had.
And so you've talked a lot about some of the things that your dad has left behind. The principles that he's left behind has really, really stuck with you. And so back in July, you used social media to wish your father a happy birthday. And I was moved by the post for a number of different reasons. And if at all possible, I would really like for you to share the post with us, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And after that, I'll share some of the reasons why I felt like it moved me, or the reason why I felt like it moved me.
Okay. It started, happy birthday, Dad. I was going to let today pass and just keep my thoughts to myself. Then after a photo shoot, Chase asked me, how did your daddy die? So I gave her a brief synopsis of the incident. In your time on this earth, you taught me a lot of things. You always told me that your job was to make sure my life was better than yours. You also made me promise to make the life of my children better than mine. I've done everything in my power to do that. At 4 years old, Chase can read anything she lays her eyes on. Chase can swim. She's been out of the country on vacation. She goes to one of the best schools money can buy. She also looks just like you, complexion and all. Chase is truly a gift from God, and I try to be everything you are to me, to her, and even more. You're a great father and friend. You made sure I was well educated, had good moral character, and a fierce competitor when the time was right. You took in my friends when they faced tough times and treated them as if they were your own flesh and blood. You taught me how to be responsible. You taught me how love meant a lot more than just providing material possessions. You taught me how to be stoic in public. You taught me how to open up to the right people at the right times. You taught me how to learn from my mistakes and make them right when possible. Social media isn't a diary, so I'll stop here. May your soul continue to rest in peace. Keep speaking to me through whatever vessel you have. I will surely do my best to listen, because Chase randomly asking me about you after a photo shoot, as it relates to awesome black fathers, is no coincidence. Happy birthday, Frederick M. Anderson Sr. And I should have tell, I'm kind of proud of myself.
Yeah, no, I was kind of nervous. I thought you might, and then that would have been a little weird, but no, it wouldn't have been weird. But no, I absolutely thought it was moving. The reason it caught me, like, I really appreciate the fact that you decided to be outwardly emotional in text. Most times, most guys don't really, for one, don't really share those types of emotions, and then two, don't necessarily write it down, right? And so in the world that we live in, that's going to live forever. You never know exactly who's going to scroll past that post and how it may touch them, whether it's a father, a son that's just lost a father, a son that has a father, right? And they're trying to figure out their connection to that, and some of the things they may be going through, and they'll realize that it isn't as bad as what they may think. So you just never know how some of the things that we're feeling, how they can help people outwardly. And so I thought that it moved me because it also showed a true connection between a father and son and the residual effects of it, right? So it truly lets me know. So now when we have the conversation about what your father meant to you, when I go back to that post lets me know that he was present, that he was there, good, bad, ugly, whatever it was, he was there, right? And so I was really appreciative of that particular post, and it made me do some reflecting of my own, right? So I absolutely appreciate that.
Indeed.
And and it also sounds like you exhibit so much respect, had or have so much respect for your father and what he did and what he's done for you. And so with that, would you rather have your child fear or respect you?
Both. And I say that because until I was probably 16 or 17, my father was not my friend. My father was my father. Okay. So are you saying that you feared him? That when you say that he was your father, meaning that he wasn't trying to be your friend, he was just trying to rear a strong man? Absolutely. My father was never my friend until I was let me rephrase that. My father was not my friend until I was 15, 16.
Okay.
Until that time, he was always my father. I did what he said. And he told me what he wanted me to do, and he would explain why and why not he wanted certain things done the way they were, and that was it. There was no, from time to time, as I got older, there was more dialogue, but like now at 4, nah, that was my dad.
Right.
We, my father always gave me a hug, and what I used to always find odd was he always like give me a kiss on the forehead or the cheek or something. He showed affection, but at the same time, he was always like that dude, It wasn't, there was no, how do I say, no playing. Like my father was not, like it was not, I'm gonna go play and punch my daddy. Nah, that ain't the game we finna do.
Right. Yeah.
Like now my daughter will play with me and she'll hit me. And I'll be thinking like, my dad would have, you'd have called that action,
Right.
So,
catching
that's
your
it.
breath.
Right. But then as I got older and the more I became a man, and I guess he really felt like he knew it was too old. I was too old for, like certain punishments. Then that's when we started having more conversation.
Right.
And then he'll tell me, how he felt about, certain things, like the whole conversation about children. I had that when I was probably like 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time me and my father ever talked about sex, period.
Right.
And so, that's why I say you got to have both. You got to know how to be firm and, you know, give your child what they need at the time. And I felt at the time when I was young, I was a boy and I was rambunctious, and, you know, I needed somebody to come in the room and I'd be like, oh man, game over.
Right.
You know, like I can't play with dude.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, and at the same time, as I got older, when I needed somebody to talk to and bounce ideas off of and talk about girls and, you know, how they think and how to, you know, how to treat them and, you know, the relationship you have with women and things like that, and the relationship you have with other men.
Yeah.
He was more vocal about it at that point.
Right.
You know, so, you know, that's why I say you gotta have both. You gotta start firm, and then you gotta kind of tear it off. You know?
Yeah.
Because after a certain age, you know, that if you don't have their respect, they not listening.
Yeah.
You know, so you gotta balance it out.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be a tough thing to balance, right? So you got to, it's again trying to manage all of that, right? So I think I want to lead by respect. I think you get more from a person that respects you opposed to fears you, right? And so there's going to be that moment, especially with boys, when they get to a point to where they're smelling it, they smelling themselves, right? And they'll try it, and I understand that they will. And God willing, if I'm here enough, then, you know, we got to stand toe to toe. We're going to stand toe to toe, but you're going to understand that there are some things that you still haven't learned yet. And so I think that having a healthy balance of those things, like you said in your example, it seemed like you feared him more early on, and that fear grew into a respect. And as you mature, you understood that it really wasn't fear. It was just a level of respect that you didn't really know how to place it.
Yeah,
right.
Like I knew I could pull certain things with mom that I couldn't get away with dad.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to paint a picture like my parents were. You know, like I had the perfect you know, upbringing. My parents got divorced when I was 15. So when I was 15, I ended up staying with my father, and my brother ended up going with my mother. I feel like you can definitely see the differences in me and my brother in that. That's a whole nother conversation.
Right. That would be an interesting conversation, but we only got so much time, man.
Yeah.
Part 2.
I get him in here. We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that together.
But it's certain conversations that I distinctly remember that kind of like the transition. I remember one day I come home and my dad's telling me how he had a coworker who told him a story about how his dad taught him how to fight. And he was like, you know, you need to learn how to fight. So the coworker and his father went in the backyard and went out here and had a fight. And my dad was like, that is like, he thought it was so weird. And he was like, we don't need to do that, dude. You know how to use your hands, right?
Sure.
And, you know, I was like, nah, I ain't never really had a fight, you know. But he was like, I'm not going to go out in the back and, you know, feel like a better word, kick your ass.
Right.
So, you know, we tussled a little bit, you know, had a little slap box. That was the first time my dad was like, cool. Like,
yeah,
you know, I could get a couple off.
Right.
And I won't get put to sleep.
Right.
You know, so,
yeah,
you know, that was one incident. And then, you know, when I first, you know, started, you know, having interactions with young ladies and started dating, you know, conversations we had about that, about, you know, okay, I know you like this young lady and, you know, you want to do this, then a third, but, you know, don't let her play you, you know, you got to make her meet you halfway, et cetera, and things like that. You know, so, you know, those are some of the things that the conversations that I had that, you know, that carry forward with me, and certain things that you got to, you know, build through relationships, you know, so.
Yeah. And so with all of that, it's like, I mean, you seem pretty steadfast and flat-footed in the things that you believe in, and where you're going, you know, presently and in the future. What do you think what's the one thing you might have told yourself 5 years ago that you think would have changed your perspective or made you think differently 5 years ago?
5 years ago, life.
Because Chase is what, 4? Yeah.
I would have, man. That's a tough call. You know, I would say I would have started working towards working for myself at that point than, you know, starting now. You know, I think, you know, I didn't have I didn't have the foresight, you know what I mean? The experiences that I've had over the last 5 years, I don't necessarily know I would have understood 5 years ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you know, if I went back, you know, some of the things I would tell myself is like, you know, plan ahead a little bit better, you know, for certain things in the future. You know, be more patient. You know what I mean? That would be the main thing I would tell myself.
Yeah.
Patience. Like if I have a weakness, it's patience.
Yeah.
You know, if I want it, I'm gonna go get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm gonna go get it right now.
Right.
You know, instead of saying, you might want that, but look at what other options you got or what options you have, because you may want to go get something different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as time, you know, goes on, you know, and things like that. You know, that's the one thing I would tell myself is like patience. And I think right now, this season of life that I'm in, that's what I'm learning. You know what I mean? I feel like God really putting that on me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey man, you haven't been patient your whole life. You finna take this.
Yeah, time to figure it out, bro. Time to figure it out. Yeah, I would agree. I definitely struggle with some patience myself. But again, that's a whole nother conversation. And so
I want to reach back to the conversation about teaching black men how we need to respond in certain situations.
okay.
I would say the one thing that I learned, or the one way I learned how to control my emotions the best, was sports and martial arts. Sports taught me that no matter how hard you work, sometimes you still gonna lose. It also taught me that no matter how good you are, you still gotta be humble, because nobody likes a jerk. You know, I learned that, you know, definitely in sports. And then I really honestly, I feel like I have a second Q blue belt in Aikido. Attaining that goal taught me to use them sparingly. I have had a lot fewer instances of being to the point where I wanted to fight somebody or being mad since then than I did before. You know, if anybody knew me in college, they knew I had a slight bit of a hothead, you know. And when I started, you know, practicing martial arts, it taught me patience and how to really control certain things. And I remember one thing one of my teachers taught me is she said, and yes, I learned Aikido from a girl, was you have to be very mindful of the situations you put yourself in, because now if you lose your temper, somebody might die, and you got to be prepared to carry that with you. And what I mean by that is because when you know what you're doing, if you hit somebody in the right way, or if you hit somebody in the right spot, and even if you don't know what you're doing, if you hit somebody in the wrong place or you hit somebody in the wrong spot, that's it. And your loss of control will make a minor situation get so much worse. And so that statement and that ability kind of put a lot of patience, you know, a lot more patience and a lot more thought into me. Like a lot of things that may have gotten me upset before don't upset me as much. Like from that moment, I absolutely avoided all physical altercations at all. You know what I mean? It's like I don't really want it to go there, you know, because I don't want it to get to a situation where I take it further than what it needs to go, and now I have to deal with the consequences.
Right. That's back to what you were saying about the responsibility, though. You've taken responsibility and understanding that the things that you know and the power that you have with the things that you know can negatively affect or have a negative impact on someone for a reason that it might not necessarily need to be.
Exactly.
So you take a step back and you assess the situation. And so did you take up martial arts as an adult, or is that?
I was an adult. I honestly didn't start until 2005.
Okay.
2005. Okay. Yeah, that's when I started, and I took my first Taekwondo class. It was it was cool, and then a year or two later, I started Aikido, and that was really my thing. Like I was like, I love that.
Okay.
You know, so.
And now, is that a defense or an offensive?
It's more defensive.
defense?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a lot more defensive.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so that in and of itself, I believe, as an adult, begins to leak into some of the things that motivate you and inspire you to be better the next day. So, what are the things that motivate you or inspire you today?
Love. Like, love is the most,
Of the love of what?
just love in general. Like, I feel like I really understand. In the Bible, it says, the fruits of God's Spirit, and it lists them all. And it says the greatest of these is love. Like, I really understand that now. And perhaps it's my wife, perhaps it's my daughter, perhaps it's a combination of both of those things, or, just various other things in life. But you got to have love for people, and not just the people but like all people. Like, you got to look at how what you do affects other people. I feel like the world we live in right now is very self-centered. Everybody only wants to look at how things affect them, but you need to look at how your actions affect other people and what kind of situations your actions put other people in, and people are very focused on themselves and what they want to do, and they don't look at how, like, you just got to look at what you do and like how it affects other people. I think the prime example of that is my father. My father was killed by somebody who was under the influence. Under the influence of what? We don't really, I didn't get the details on it because I just wasn't in the headspace to be on it at that point. Drugs, or, alcoholic beverages, whatever. But because of the choices that person made earlier in that day, my father isn't here today. And a lot of other people got hurt along with him in that incident. And I'm pretty sure, and that I'm sure that happens with a lot of people who drive under the influence. When you're throwing them back, you're not really thinking about what you're doing and how that's going to affect other people. Now I'm definitely more conscious of what I do and how, the possibilities of who it could affect, and, what could be the result. So, and I think that's something that we as a people need to be more aware of. We need to be more aware of, each other. And we need to definitely, just have more love for people, be more happy for people and their successes, and, so many other things. I don't want to get on a tangent. So
Right. But it can go. I mean, I absolutely understand what you're saying. And so you spoke to, like, the advice that you would give to yourself. If you can look back 5 years, what advice would you give to a young man that's looking to start a family?
Man, first of all, you need to be sure that you're ready for what you're asking for. You need to take ownership of the fact that if you're about to start a family, however you're about to start a family, that family is going to start as a result of a choice you made. So when you decide to start this family and you decide to bring this life into the world, that's on you. And, you owe that person, pretty much everything you have to make them the best possible person they can be. Even if it's, it comes from a frivolous relationship, maybe you really weren't into shorty like that, or, it just was what it was. But now this is where we are, so now that you have this life coming into the world, you got to step up and you got to take that responsibility, and you got to be all things to that child, because all that child knows is you.
Right.
My daughter is so, and everybody's child for the most part is so oblivious to what's going on in the world. All they really know is you, when you come home, how you act, how you carry yourself, the things that you instill in them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we as parents mold the future.
Right.
So a young man who wants to do that, you got to be sure you're ready to carry that, because it's a lot to carry. And I thank God that, I didn't have any children prior to, the age of 34, because at, 19, 20, 21, I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I was in a completely different headspace. I was way too selfish,
Right.
to be a parent, so I don't knock young parents, but, you just got to talk to them like, man, it's a lot bigger than what you realize at that young age.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
There was also one thing,
Yeah.
if I can double back, because I listened to the podcast, all of them.
Right.
For
sure.
And
Appreciate that.
but it was something that Corey Moses has said during his visit on the podcast that really kind of touched me. And
The integrity. So you said you think, your words exactly, I think a person's integrity pushes them to be courageous. And so you wanted to speak to that?
Correct. I think that because I think the conversation was talking about, raising men and courage and things like that. And
Right.
then, I think the question was what's more important, courage or integrity?
Right.
And my take on it was I feel like integrity pushes courage. You have to be who you are and stand on your moral values. And when you stand on them, that forces you to be courageous in the face of adversity. Because we've all been in situations where maybe, I give you a perfect example. If I go somewhere and I'm hanging out with the guys and I know I have to go get my daughter, I'm not drinking.
Right.
It doesn't really matter what you're doing, how much fun you having, how much drinking y'all doing. I'm not drinking. That integrity forces me to be courageous and not to indulge in what everybody else is indulging in because I know what I got to go do. And I think that's the same thing that pushes Colin Kaepernick. Is that Colin Kaepernick is sacrificing his career over the fact that his moral character is being motivated with all the things and the violence and the unfair treatment of African Americans, especially males. And so he's at the point where his integrity has caused him to be courageous and give up his career. And I'm sure a lot of people been in his ear like, so many other things you could do, bro.
Right.
Like you giving up millions. You're not making any money right now.
Yeah.
All because you want to kneel, during the national anthem. There's so many other ways you could do this and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But that's his way to speak out, so his integrity is pushing him to be courageous. And I think that's one thing that.
And he can go to sleep at night.
Right.
It's easier, right? Fundamentally, spiritually, he's at a place where he's at peace. No amount of money can give you that peace once you've decided who you are and you understand that. I think that, especially with men, I think we lay, most men, I would say, we like to be held by the words that we say. And so when we say a particular thing, we would want those things to define us. So we act in that way. Most, it's not everybody. Not everybody says that and do the things that they say. But in most cases, guys that have made a decision, whether it's about fatherhood or manhood or anything, just being a man in general, they hold the things that they say in really high regard, right? And they try their best, I think, to make actions that follow, that follow that. So I can see where you're coming from in terms of the integrity drives you to be courageous. Interesting. Now I want to jump back to a conversation we were having off air about raising young girls to be strong women that quote unquote don't need a man. Now, from your perspective, are you raising her to not need men? You're empowering her to be the strongest version of herself. But in the same token, are you putting her in a position where a man that wants to be with her when she's older can't because of the things that you've instilled in her?
I feel like you have to, you have to be able to manage independence when it comes to relationships, especially when it comes to men and women. As a man, or just period, as a person, you have to be able to say to yourself, I can do this on my own. I can live life without anybody or without one particular person. Because at the end of the day, everyone in your life is going to leave at some point. You may check out first.
Right.
So you have to be able to move forward in life without them. At the same time, you have to make the conscious decision to say, even though I can do it, I don't want to. So, for example, if somebody asks me, can I live my life without my wife? Yes, without a question. Now, Do I want to live my life without my wife? Absolutely not. It's a whole different ball game. If I had to, could I? Yes. Would I choose that? No.
Right. And so with that being said, right, so we understand and we know that we all can exist with, without one another, but we were put here, men and women were put here to help each other, right? And so on the flip side, would you want your wife to need you? Not be needy, but need you. So if she told you, I don't need you, what is that?
There are moments in your life where you need each other.
Right.
But there are also moments in your life where you don't. And I think you have to balance the two. My wife is very strong, very independent, and can she live her life without me? Absolutely.
Right.
She can handle this thing.
Yeah, you know that, but I'm
without a
saying
doubt.
in that space when it's the two of you, right? And the things that you bring to the relationship. We talked a lot about being a provider and protector and all of those things. Those things, I believe, require a need, right? And so for you to feel of some value, if she tells you that she doesn't need you, does that make you feel a particular way?
No. I don't feel the need to.
So your ego doesn't get in the way of that.
No. I want to be wanted. Okay, I put it like this. It's more of a need to be wanted than a need to be needed. I want to know. I put it like this. What gives me peace? Having lost a father and having seen life when you lose somebody that close to you. I don't want my wife or my daughter to feel like I can't function without Fred. But what I do need is I need them to want me in their lives. So I want to know when I check out, they're going to be able to handle it. They're going to be able to, they're going to grieve and they're going to go through, different stages and that. But at the end of the day, I want them to be able to, pick up and move forward. And so, as it relates to how I raise my daughter, I want Chase to be able to do everything for herself. But I want her also to be strong enough to allow for someone to do things for her. I want her to I don't want her to feel like, oh, she needs a man to be complete. But I also want her to allow him to assist and allow him to complete her. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's, something that, I have in my life, Yeah. I hope my wife feels the same way. I hope she don't get mad and nothing I said.
Yeah. Well, we'll figure it out. We might let her hear first and then.
The game is the game.
Yeah.
Anybody who knows me know I ain't gonna back down from my statements. But
well, you can say that now because she ain't said it here. But I know your wife.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't tell me that. I know who Sherelle is.
She gonna, buddy.
So we'll have that conversation a little bit. I might just put this in my pocket and just use it against you for a couple years. So beers on you for like 3 years.
But yeah, so with Chase, I want her to be able to say, I have a good job. I can take care of myself. I can get the things that I want for myself. But at the same time, I want her to be able to allow that special man in her life to change her tire, to take her out. I know,
and give him the space to do it.
Yeah,
I know you can do it. I know you can go to work and make more money. Possibly make more money than me or make just as much. I know that that's a possibility, but don't step on my toes for things that I believe will add value to this particular relationship. And that goes down a whole nother, because then we get to talking about roles and relationships. And there's a big conversation about, why can't a woman do, and can is a strong word, but why can't women do everything that a man does and so forth and so on. And we can definitely get into that in part 2, right? But no, I just wanted to get your perspective on that because, I think it's absolutely necessary to raise a young girl to be a strong woman.
You got to know when to turn it on and turn it off, I feel. There are moments when I have to be a strong person in the situation, and there are moments when I have to let her do her thing. you know, and there are moments when I need her to do her thing.
Right.
You know, like I need you to hold this down. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's just kind of stressing me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, vice versa.
Mhm.
And you know, that's when you know you found a good thing, is when you found somebody who can balance you out. Because if anybody knows me or my wife, we like completely different type people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But that's
So-
that. I mean that what helps. That helps to balance things out.
Yeah.
You know, I know you've been generous with your time today, so I want to. I'm not going to continue to hold you. I have one more question. If you had an opportunity to put an image or a phrase or a statement in every barbershop across the country, right? What do you think that image would be or that phrase would say?
I think the image would be like a family barbecue. Like everyone sitting at a table talking, whether they eating, having a beverage, playing a game, playing cards, whatever. Because the most important thing for people is community. You know what I mean? Like we need to realize how we affect each other and how we feed off each other, all in the same space. You know, if people who have a circle of good friends, when you look at all the experiences that you've had. You've poured into them, they've poured into you, you've held them up, they've held you up. You know, and that's the most important thing, is that, you know, we all affect each other. You know, and so, you know, it goes back to that love. Like we gotta have love for each other, and we gotta express that, and you can't be afraid to share that. You know, and one of the people at the table will probably be crying. And I say that because you can't be afraid to show emotion, and you can't be afraid to cry when you're in that safe space. And so, you know, it happened. You know, it's part of life.
No, that's interesting. That especially the fact of having the detail of having someone crying definitely would spark a good conversation, I'm sure. I appreciate you coming through and you know, and chopping it up with me. Now tell me you didn't enjoy that. Really. Tell me. I know the letter to his pops was moving, right? I mean, where else can you get this type of honesty and authenticity of black men and what they believe about being fathers in the lives of their children? If for no other reason, this is why we're here, to provide content that is empowering, encouraging, and educational so that we can become a better version of ourselves. As always, I appreciate you joining us, but if you could do us a favor and share this episode with at least one person that you know will either be encouraged, empowered, or inspired by this episode, we will be in your debt at least until the next episode comes out. See you episode 5.